People have to get out of the mind control methodology that is waged against them of the political spectrum being a breakdown of left versus right-wing politics. This is the traditional view of the political spectrum, where you have on the left side communism and on the right side fascism. And then you have center politics in the middle, okay? There is no place on this chart for actual freedom or abolition of government. There is no place on this chart where the actual coercion and violence exercised over human beings to keep them under government control is absent. So it's all a form of slavery. It's all control over people, whether it's left-wing control or right-wing control. Okay, I have introduced what I call the true political spectrum to try to steer people away from falling into this mind control trap, because that's what it is. It's social engineering the existing publicly recognized political spectrum. Here's a far more accurate, what I call the true political spectrum, and I put even politics in quotes, in double quotes, because it's really not a spectrum of politics. This is a spectrum of human consciousness, by which there is only one razor's edge, a needle point where there's true freedom, in the middle at the top of the chart. And I know it may be a little bit small to read here in the audience. People can study it later in the slides, but basically this axis at the bottom represents control of human beings. And the axis on the left-hand side represents consciousness of human beings. So as consciousness is low, control goes to total. And as consciousness is raised higher and higher, control is less and less and less. The only place where control is absent is in the middle at that 0 point, right at the very top of the mountain peak, or that needle point at the top. Okay, a very difficult place to go to and maintain that position. Most people slide down those slippery slopes very quickly. Okay, so you could see on the left, all the way to the far left, total control or slavery of human beings. You have communism or international socialism. Just to the right of that is democratic, incremental socialism. That's where this country is right now. We're sliding down the slope toward total control. But we're at that point where we are trying to institute democratic, incremental socialism. We're going to talk about that as an ideology later. Then you have a republic based on classical liberalism. Then you have libertarianism, slightly left-leaning perhaps. Then on the other side, you have maybe slight right-leaning libertarianism, and then a republic based on classical conservatism. Then corporate incremental socialism, which is what Nazism basically was, and the fascism under Mussolini in Italy. And then you have outright fascism, National Socialism being implemented as a slavery system. Okay, so again, this is a function of consciousness. The left-hand side gauges the amount of consciousness, alignment with objective morality and natural law, and respect for self-ownership that is present in human society. All right, so that's what I think people should understand as the real political spectrum, or the real way consciousness and control of human beings are related to each other. And again, we'll talk about that later when we talk about natural law and the law of freedom. People have to stop falling in line with what's called polarization dialectics. Polarization dialectics, also referred to as the Hegelian dialectic, after the German philosopher Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, refers to the structured psychological manipulation of two polarized worldviews to bring them toward an identical sociological end. Dialectics are specifically used in the political realm to steer polarized political factions toward a totalitarian system of government. The relevant question for us to ask is, who created that dialectic in the first place to steer the seemingly opposing sides to the same outcome? And that's what I'm going to talk about and reveal, that these are social engineers and they are occultists, what I call dark occultists. See, it doesn't matter whether you join the donkey cult, the elephant cult, the camp of international socialism or national socialism. They're all taking you to the same place, and this is the world that they want to create. They want to build a prison society. They want to put the world into bondage and slavery. It's like giving a farm animal the choice to go down one road to the slaughterhouse or down the other road to the slaughterhouse. It doesn't matter which road they choose. They're going to end up at the same place. And that's all politics is. It's just a polarizing dialectic to get people into slavery. Let's look at the political commonalities, just as political systems alone, of Nazism and communism. You know, if we get into the underlying ideologies, they're almost completely identical. But just let's look at how they are very, very similar in their political methodologies. They both have underlying totalitarian political ideology. The complete control of people and resources is ultimately their objectives as political systems. They share in common the use of propaganda and indoctrination to influence the minds of the public, especially the young. Okay, so this is social engineering. They use pseudo-religious symbolism and trappings to foment cult-like religiosity in their political followers. They both share that in common. They both exercise complete control of their media systems within their nations, within their regimes, and exercise total censorship of conflicting information so that people really can't get conflicting information to even think differently than the totalitarian regime of Nazism and communism wants them to think. They engage in shaming and dehumanization of all political opponents of the regime. They use the brutal utilization of military and secret police forces via order followers, people who will unquestioningly obey their orders, no matter how immoral they are. And we'll talk about order followers later as well. They share in common the deployment of internment or work camps or concentration camps to punish or kill political opponents and undesirables in their regimes. And about the only real way, even in the political aspect, that they differ is in the 20th century alone, how many human beings they respectively killed. Nazism was confined within Europe, and the Nazis were stopped in World War II. And before they were stopped, they exercised the extermination of approximately 20 million people. And those numbers are, you know, it's probably a conservative estimate if you take into account all the people that were the result, that died as a result of what Nazism did. And communism is responsible for the estimated deaths of 94 million people in the 20th century. So absolutely horrific numbers of people who lost their lives to these ideological regimes.